So question of the day today, Lyle. Why do people still circumcise their children?
Okay, so there are three basic reasons why people still circumcise their children, and they really come down to religious reasons. And so for Jewish people, there is still a Jewish requirement that comes from, right back at the time of Abraham, the covenant with Abraham, to circumcise their children. And of course, Islam being an Abrahamic religion and accepting Abraham as their father through Ishmael, they still have a religious requirement for circumcision as well. Then you have cultural reasons. And so some people, culturally, because, my grandfather was done, my father was done, I was done, therefore my kids are going to be done, whatever it might be, there are a whole different range of cultural reasons that we really can't go into.
That's the reasoning. You were talking about just then, weren't you?
Sorry?
That's the reasoning behind
Yeah, that's the reason. I'm not talking about anybody here. We're not going to be mentioning any names in this particular program as to who is and who isn't. And then, of course, there are those who do it for health reasons. Now, this is probably the one where there's the most controversy and also the most research that has been done. And I thought I would spend a little bit of time sharing with you some of the reasons that people have given from a health perspective. Okay, so there is no major medical organization in the world that supports the banning of male circumcision. Now, we're talking about a very different thing here from female circumcision. Female circumcision is just, female genital mutilation.
FGM, yep.
Yeah, FGM. That's probably another question for another day. And of course, that's got nothing to do with Bible or God or anything like that. And it's done for very different reasons. It's not done for health reasons. It's done to make sex unpleasurable for women, basically.
So you can control them better. It's basically...
Yeah.
It's disgusting and should be banned, but let's go back to male circumcision.
Absolutely. Going back to male circumcision, there's no major, World Health Organization, none of these guys propose a ban on it. Even, the Royal Dutch Medical Association, which is probably the most opposed major organization to male circumcision, says that a ban on it would be detrimental from a healthcare perspective. Even though they strongly recommend against it in basically almost all circumstances. Okay, the World Health Organization, on the other hand, does recommend circumcision in sub-Saharan Africa because of reduced rates of HIV in heterosexual men. And they have found that in South Africa, Kenya and Uganda, those three countries right there, the cost of circumcising men, and of course it's voluntary in all of these countries, has been offset by the savings that it produces in lower rates of HIV infection. And so from an economic perspective, they have calculated a $16.5 billion savings.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's quite significant. 40% of men worldwide, thereabouts, have been circumcised. Okay, so as far as treatment goes, and so this is people who are circumcised as medical treatment to treat a medical condition, and of course there are people are opposed to that, but people are opposed also to mastectomies and all kinds of other treatments, amputation and whatnot. There are times when you need to cut something off because it's going to be a problem, and so there are a list here of medical conditions that I can't pronounce. Pathological phimosis, refractory balanoposthitis, chronic UTI, urinary tract infections, and as we also mentioned, reduce the rates of HIV. This is an interesting one. Penile cancer in countries that have very low rates of circumcision is about 4.3 per 100,000, very low. In Israel, which probably has the highest rate, it is 0.1 per 100,000. And so there are distinct medical reasons why people would choose to have this particular procedure. A very good friend of mine had this procedure once because he was a surfer and got sick of getting sand all stuck in it. So he's just like, problem solved right there. Now, of course, there's a lot of debate about in relationship to sexual pleasure, and there is no scientific evidence that has been able to be produced that it either reduces or enhances sexual pleasure. A lot of anecdotal evidence that argues either direction on that one. As far as women goes, in a 2017 study noted a decreased risk of cervical cancer, cervical dysplasia, HSV2, chlamydia, and syphilis amongst women who were married to and had relationships with circumcised men. So there are some medical reasons for it, and we find that there are medical reasons for amputations, there are medical reasons for having part of your bowel removed. Goodness knows what else it might be. There are medical reasons why we would take lots of things away, and that's another reason that people still practice circumcision. However, the Bible is crystal clear that this is not something that is required for Christians in any way, shape or form. That if you are a part of a Christian organisation and they are saying that you need to be circumcised, there is so much information in the New Testament. A great passage that somebody pointed out to us on our Twitter feed, I think it was in Philippians chapter 3 and verse 2. Watch out for those dogs whose people do evil, those mutilators who say you must be circumcised to be saved. Paul made this abundantly clear that this was not a requirement for the Christian church or the Christian religion in any way, shape or form.
So circumcision, not a requirement for salvation, actually doesn't really have much to do with religion at all anymore, except for maybe those leftover traditional cultures around the globe.
Yeah, well, those religions that still, trace back to
tradition.
Abraham, they don't have the New Testament. The Jewish religion doesn't have the New Testament. Islam doesn't accept the New Testament, particularly the writings of Paul. And so they see that for them, that is very much a religious practice. But outside of those religions,
medical.
It's the only real reason that you would proceed with that procedure would be for medical reasons.
Okay, all right. Well,
but it's not going to do. There's no harm involved. It's not one of these harmful.
Well, that's
procedures.
debatable as well. They have they're trying to do studies about the traumatization of babies and where that leads and that kind of thing. But
okay,
I guess if
let me rephrase that. Let me
rephrase
rephrase it. No major World Health Organization has promoted a universal ban on it for medical reasons. That's probably a better way of putting it.
And if 40% of men in the world have had it done, then they all seem to be pretty okay, then I guess. Otherwise, half the half the men on the planet would be losing their mind.
I'm sure there's a few out there that complain about it, but that comes to anecdotal evidence rather than science.
Okay, thank you so much. If you have a question, give us a call. 1-800-FAITH-FM is our number.